So right now, a little bit earlier than usual, you can listen to or watch the new episode of Next Up. Dan and Batya are my guests. We talk about 2028 and politics, and I talk about why the Democrats seem to constantly, for a decade now, be discombobulated when Donald Trump talks about immigration. I also talk about the DNC. And I go back to Ron Brown, DNC chair, who in 1991 convened an unprecedented meeting at Pamela Harriman's estate in Virginia with all the leading potential Democratic presidential candidates, all the party's biggest donors. And he basically said to them in private, Paul Tully, who is one of the greatest strategists in the history of the Democratic Party, we're going to raise a ton of money. We're going to build the infrastructure. And whichever one of you is the nominee is going to inherit a capacity to compete against the Bush White House. Because if we don't do this project, you'll never be able to do it because you're going to all be fighting to win the nomination. You're going to be the nominee in February or March or April. You'll never have time to gear up. It was a brilliant move by one of the best chairmen either party's ever had, one of the best strategists they've ever had. And it allowed Bill Clinton, who didn't win the nomination until the spring because he faced a lot of barriers and speed bumps, to inherit this extraordinary operation at the DNC. Now, fast forward to today. The current DNC chairman, instead of building an unprecedented operation, is fighting with David Hogg and getting on a Zoom that's leaked, the audio for which the audio is leaked, saying, "You're making me a failure, David Hogg. I can't be good chairman because I have to babysit your attempt to primary our incumbents." Thank you. So one big issue to follow from here through the winter of 2028 is, will the DNC or any other entity, some Soros funded or whatever it is, build infrastructure? Because the Republicans are super quiet about their infrastructure advantage, because Charlie Kirk and forces with Musk and others, they built get out the vote operations, voter registration operations in the battleground states. This doesn't exist on the Democratic side. I don't know how big the gap is because the Republicans are smartly, for the first time ever, being quiet. The winning side with technological superiority didn't do a bunch of interviews after the election saying, look how smart we were. Look at all the stuff we can do. So this is my long-winded introduction to promote the current episode of Next Up. Watch it on YouTube or listen to it as a podcast and tell you, well, the DNC is not doing nothing. The DNC is building a massive operation to do this. 104, please.
It's Monday, June 9th, 2025, and welcome to our first episode of The Blueprint. I'm Hannah Moldavan, Deputy Communications Director for the Democrats, and your host today. You might be asking, what is The Blueprint? Donald Trump is counting on us to get distracted, but we're not falling for it. Every morning, we'll cut through the noise and give you the real story. What's happening today that actually matters, why it's a big deal, and how you can fight back and help Democrats win. Whether you're in the trenches of Democratic politics or just want the truth, this is your go-to spot. So let's get to work.
Damn. I do wonder what Ron Brown would say about this. But before Dan and Sean weigh in on how valuable this new YouTube-based DNC program is, let's go back to the host for another bit of Episode 1, Season 1, Episode 1 of The Blueprint. 105, please.
And Trump and the GOP are hoping Americans won't notice the impact of their deeply unpopular policies, but we know better. Whether it's a chat in the office or a conversation over coffee, take a few minutes, talk to a friend or neighbor about how the Republican budget bill would affect people in your community. The truth travels faster by word of mouth. Here are your top points. 1, this bill will threaten access to healthcare. From Medicaid to now Medicare and the ACA, deep cuts to all of these programs will kick millions off their insurance and force them to pay exorbitant out-of-pocket premiums. 2, this bill will jeopardize SNAP, ripping away millions of families' ability to put food on the table. And this bill would make Trump's tax scam permanent, permanently rigging the system so the ultra-rich can cheat on their taxes while working families pay more. Thank you so much for joining us today for our very first episode of The Blueprint. Please join us weekdays, every day during the week, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. Until next time.
All right. Ever since I saw that, I wondered what would Ron Brown and Paul Tully say about that. But Dan, they're not here. Both of them sadly have passed. So I'm asking you, in the contribution to allocation of DNC resources and contribution to winning in the midterms and the presidential, where would you rate that effort?
first off, we need to thank Tim, our former colleague, who did it starting at 10 a.m. after the morning.
Oh, you stole my talking
so
point.
You can watch both here. Look, Mark, I actually think that's actually a good thing. I do.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm asking your opinion.
Yeah, because, well, okay. I thought you were insinuating that it was a joke.
No.
A lot of people get their communication now and their entertainment from YouTube, right? And so I think they are attempting to meet people where they are. We can all quiver over whether those three things that she lists are in fact going to happen. But for tens of millions of Democrats, that is how they see it. And I think if it's a neat packaged place that Democrats can go to kind of hear the tribal, hymnal for the day, like, I think that's great. I mean, it's, one small step for the party here, but we have a long way to go. But that is better than the Ken Martin and David Hogg kind of wrestling over who's in charge of the DNC. But I actually, if Tim had that, Tim, great idea.
Sean.
Look, I will say this. Dan got the first bite at this, but I was going to say the only smart thing is that they started at 10, so at least they could get all their ideas from the morning meeting. Look, I'll take it. They've got Hannah Moldavid. We've got Patrick Bet-David. There's my other line. This is again, it's not bad. It's not a bad idea, but it's not like goes back to what I've always said. Like, there's a tactic versus a strategy. That's a tactic. Throwing out a podcast or a press release or a tweet is a tactic. What is your end goal? What's the strategy? And how do you string together a series of tactics to achieve your end goal through a comprehensive strategy? Right now, that to me is like, hey, let's just throw mud at the wall. Let's announce a podcast. To your point earlier, Mark, when I came into the RNC with Reince, we were $25 million in debt. We literally could not afford basic necessities or payroll. We got the donors together. Reince rallied them around a common cause, which is, here's what we need to do. I need you to help us. And Ken Martin, to your point, is spending his time whining about David Hogg's crowding him out, as opposed to saying, I'm going to go make a name for himself. I'm going to put a plan together to rally the base around the infrastructure that we need to build to succeed in the future. We've been there before. We were there as a party. We literally could not keep the lights on, and we got everybody to rally around the cause and the goal as to what our real mission was, which was to provide the infrastructure, not the message, the infrastructure for our next nominee to embrace. And we did it. This can be done. People said, if you go back and look at the stories from 2012, Republicans could never compete technologically with Democrats. We were way behind in the data space. We would never catch up. And we did. And we surpassed them. And now the same stories. The problem is this. My favorite quote in life comes from General Charles Krulak, who said, in the absence of leadership, take charge. And what Ken Martin needs to do is take a page out of that and say, you know what? I'm going to lead instead of whine. And it's pretty clear he's not up to the job already.
Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the Two-Way community, never miss a clip. And you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.